Hello, hello, good afternoon.
Hello.
We'll get started here in just a minute as folks file in.
Hey, Nick.
Hello.
Hello.
All right. Well, I'm not seeing the participant list tick up much more, but I don't see as many folks here as I expected. We'll give it just another few seconds here. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Thanks for logging into our info event for the open regions in the CEJA Clean Jobs Workforce Network program. I'm Nate Keener. I'm the CEJA Central Regional Administrator for the Office of Employment and Training with DCEO. We want to provide some information about CEJA grant opportunities, how those will impact your community, and what you can do to stay engaged as we build out a renewable energy transition in Illinois. We are here today to continue our engagement efforts for local communities to learn about the CEJA programs and how to apply. We've had a couple of successful rounds receiving applications for workforce hubs and ET Navigator programs, but we do still need to identify a qualified applicant in a couple of places. And so today we'll be primarily talking about the Clean Jobs Workforce Network program, otherwise known as the Workforce Hubs. And so, of course, we're here to discuss the upcoming NOFO release for this program in the regions where it's open. We're holding this event in advance of the NOFO release with the hope it'll give you and your team more time to build out your staffing plan and establish partners with other organizations and employers and design your program plan. And if nothing else, we're going to share lots of resources. And so hopefully, hosting this event early helps you do all your homework before applying. We have some new potential applicants here today, and we have some returning applicants. And so I hope this session is useful for all of you and offers something for everybody. Here's what I'll plan to cover today. So we'll overview what is CEJA, what are the current grant opportunities that will be coming available later this spring, some advice on building your team, and connecting to the CEJA ecosystem. We'll talk a little bit about what the grant application life cycle looks like. We'll talk a bit about how you can build your organization's capacity to apply, share lots of resources, and then hold plenty of time for questions that you all have. Okay, real quick, pop quiz. What does CJA stand for? Anybody have anybody know that one? And I
Clean
realize
Energy Jobs Agency.
it's actually the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act. And this is comprehensive landmark energy legislation in Illinois that centers equity and puts Illinois on track to achieve 100% renewable energy by the year 2050. The legislation includes energy access and solar for all, renewable energy, energy efficiency, and a plan for how we're going to get to carbon-free power as a state. It includes funding for electric transportation and finally support for fossil fuel workers and their families. Our focus today will be on this orange slice of pie here, the Equitable Workforce and Business Development section, specifically the Workforce Network, uh, Clean Jobs Workforce Network program. So here we are showing you the DCEO CEJA Workforce and Business Development ecosystem. DCEO has several divisions within the agency, all housing CEJA programs. The Office of Employment and Training is the office I'm from, and we manage the workforce programs in this yellow box here. And today we're going to be highlighting one of these programs, but all of these programs work together to train the workforce for the clean energy transition in Illinois. Um, the Office of Entrepreneurship and Innovation Technology is another office within DCEO, and they manage the contractor support programs, the Contractor Incubator Program, and the Primes Contractor Accelerator Program. And then finally, the Office of Energy and Business Utilities, this bottom one here in the light blue box, um, that office manages our economic development and jobs and environmental justice programs. And the idea of calling this an ecosystem, a workforce and business development ecosystem, is that the idea of CEJA is to train workers in these several workforce training programs, and then to place those workers, at least some of those workers, with contractors that we've supported through the contractor programs, who then work with their local community to activate large-scale renewable energy projects right there in their own community to help move forward the energy transition. And so, important as you think about applying to the Clean Jobs Workforce Network program, how does your project fit into this scheme here, right? Obviously, we know that the program will be in this yellow box, but how will you plan to connect to contractors and other employers in your region? How will you plan to connect to the Contractor Incubator Program and the contractors being supported by that program? What kind of plans will you have to connect with community projects? What are the local municipalities in your region doing to think about the energy transition? And how can you plug into that? How will the workers that you're training in your programs help those future projects in your community? And then of course, how will you plan to connect to the broader workforce system like WIOA and JTED and Illinois Works and apprenticeship programs? These are all things that you could be thinking about as you ponder your application. So what clean energy jobs will the programs prepare people for? It's important for applicants to understand the clean energy opportunities in your community so you can choose the appropriate training to provide in the region. And so we list a number of the fields here: solar energy, solar thermal, wind energy, electric vehicle, green hydrogen, energy efficiency, healthy building materials, energy storage, and then we also are talking about industries achieving emissions reductions. And so in addition to the kind of uh, most readily identifiable jobs in these fields, right? Solar PV installer, wind energy technician. We're also talking about the administrative and sales and other back office support functions within these industries too. Those also count as clean jobs. And as I mentioned, these are equity-focused programs, and equitable workforce development is a very important part of the CEJA law. It's a vital component of it. So what does equitable workforce development look like? Well, here we've got a graphic that helps us understand the difference between some of these terms, right? Where in an equality framework, everybody is given the exact same support, regardless of whether it's correlated to their needs or not. When we're talking about equity, everybody gets the support that they need. And so you see here the tallest person doesn't need the assist to see over the fence, whereas the other people need varying levels of support to be able to see over the fence, and they've achieved everyone being able to see over the fence. But then the idea of doing this equity work is that one day we've achieved justice and we don't have to we've just gotten rid of the fence, right? We've gotten rid of all the barriers, and now everybody's kind of on the same playing field here. And in order to achieve equitable workforce development, the CEJA workforce programs are looking at more than just the numeric participant targets, right? So of course we want to make sure that we're seeing evidence of equity in terms of the people who are joining our programs, but we also want to make sure that they're being set up for success, right? And so the CEJA programs the CEJA Workforce Program we'll be talking about today, the Clean Jobs Workforce Network Program, includes robust barrier reduction support to ensure that people are able to join the programs and then stay in them. CEJA calls on organizations to build a community of collaboration, and so as we're thinking about applying for this program, we want to make sure that we're working with stakeholders in our community who are in touch with the needs of that community, who are in touch with the populations that we're trying to serve, right? We want to empower for resilience and success. And so we want to ensure that our programs are set up to serve all kinds of different people. We want to make sure that they're thinking about people who are taking public transportation. Is it accessible? Are your training programs accessible to transportation lines? Are we offering instruction in different modes of instruction? Are we staffing our team from the community that we're trying to serve? So things like that are important markers. Of course, part of applying for a grant is setting goals, telling us how many people you plan to serve, and then being held to account for those numbers. All of this working towards creating a culture of belonging that celebrates all of our differences. And in the clean energy transition, everyone is welcome. So who will these programs serve? We're going to be focusing today on the Clean Jobs Workforce Network program, but in general, the CEJA programs serve similar populations. We'll get into the specific eligibility for the workforce hubs here in a little bit, but just to give you a quick overview of CEJA, CEJA seeks to serve um, um, people living in equity investment eligible communities like environmental justice or R3 communities. And you see a map here demonstrating how large these EJ and or R3 communities are in relation to the size of some of the cities in our state. CEJA also seeks to serve former members of foster care system and as well as current members, as well as the formerly incarcerated and those other folks with a history of involvement with the criminal justice system. And then finally, supporting displaced energy workers and other people with barriers to employment, such as low educational attainment, language barriers, history of incarceration, that kind of thing. And just for a little more background, when we're talking about equity investment eligible communities and environmental justice and R3 communities, environmental justice uh, geography is determined based on like pollution factors. So uh, exposure to toxic pollutants, pollution indicators in communities, poverty level indicators, and other socioeconomic factors. The R3 communities are designated by the Illinois cannabis law, and it looks at rates of crime, rates of incarceration, and other socioeconomic factors as well. So that's where those come from. So how can CEJA help my community? Well, the energy transition that is planned by CEJA will bring about economic opportunity, economic growth, job opportunities, better environmental outcomes, better health outcomes. It can expand economic development efforts that are already ongoing. And then, of course, clean energy jobs make communities more resilient and help to combat climate change. How can CEJA help your organization? Well, CEJA provides a lot of stable funding, and it's going to be around for a long time. And so CEJA can help your organization build capacity for hiring staff, conducting professional development activities, and building new networks of partners and providers. CEJA is a very flexible funding source, which includes a robust barrier reduction fund that can help trainees overcome barriers to successfully completing the training and finding employment. And CEJA is a state-funded program which can be leveraged with other non-CEJA programs. Well, some of you may be asking, what if my organization is small or new, and you can't afford to wait for reimbursement? The CEJA Workforce Hub program does offer advanced funding of up to 20% of the total grant award. This is something that must be requested in writing and approved by DCEO in advance. And the allocation of that funding is subject to a risk assessment. But all to say that there is the option to get some of that funding up front so that you can get your program off the ground. CEJA funds can be used for capacity building and hiring, and as I mentioned before, provides a stable source of funding um, through 2050 and encourages a robust partner network and the leveraging of funds. So, similar to the last slide, can really help to build the capacity of your organization so it's down the road, it's not so small anymore. How can CEJA help employers? CEJA requires that the Workforce Hub program utilize a standard clean jobs curriculum framework developed through a stakeholder process to identify the career pathways and training curriculum needed for participants to be skilled, work ready, and able to enter clean energy jobs. The hubs will implement the curriculum framework to provide training, certification prep, job readiness, skill development, math skills, technical skills, certification test preparation, and other development needed to program participants. Um, the framework consists of a bridge program curriculum outline as well as a set of job-specific curricula, along with general standards and minimum requirements for those programs. Um, and so CEJA delivers to those employers trained, qualified graduates with industry credentials. They have employability skills. It can help employers meet minimum equity or supplier diversity requirements. So a lot of the approved vendors participating in Illinois Shines or Illinois Solar for All can meet their minimum equity standards by hiring from the Workforce Hub and other CEJA programs. And then, of course, growing their business to take advantage of clean energy project funding. So hiring all these clean energy workers will help them to be qualified to pursue some of those clean energy project funds. And then finally, how can CEJA help individuals? Um, Trainees will receive an employability skills training. And that curriculum framework I discussed earlier lays out what that looks like. They'll also receive job-specific training for in-demand clean energy-focused jobs leading to nationally recognized industry credentials. Local hubs will determine the training needs for their communities, and those trainees will receive robust and flexible barrier reduction funding to help them succeed in the training program and transition into employment. The barrier reduction funds include wraparound support services uh, uh, to to help trainees access training, student support services while enrolled in training, and then transitional supportive services while transitioning to a job. Trainees will also receive a $13 per hour stipend, which will help to defray their training costs while participating in training. And all of this helps to build a prosperous community of which we will all benefit from. Okay, so now I want to talk a little bit about the current Open CEJA Workforce grants. Um, And one of the resources that I'll provide after this meeting in a follow-up is a link to our CEJA updates and program status page if you don't already have that bookmarked. That's kind of your one-stop shop for news about DCEO CEJA programs, and when the NOFO is announced, it'll be posted there as well. So, as I mentioned earlier, we're holding this session in advance of the NOFO release, so I can't link you to a NOFO yet, but the CEJA updates and program status page is where you can go to find that. And so, when that NOFO is released, we will be soliciting applications for the Workforce Network program in Peoria, Danville, and Kankakee. We will be soliciting for the Energy Transition Navigator program in Champaign and Kankakee. So if you're unaware, the Kankakee site was added by the legislature last year with an effective date of July 1st of this year. And so we will plan to kind of have the NOFOs out. It'll be the same NOFO for the Peoria, Danville, and Kankakee hubs. And then there will be a separate NOFO that will cover both the Kankakee and Champaign Navigator programs. And so you see those on the map here. The green dots are the hub programs, and then the yellow dot is the Navigator program. I just couldn't split the Kankakee dot into green and yellow like I did down here. So just know that there is a Kankakee Navigator coming as well. And these other dots that you see on this map represent all of the other Clean Jobs Workforce Network program grantee locations that we have been able to fill those. And so all those orange dots represent a location where there is currently a Workforce Hub grantee. All right, so now let's dive into a little bit, dive into the program here to talk specifically about what the Clean Jobs Workforce Network program is. It's often referred to as the Workforce Hubs or the Clean Jobs Hubs. This is the biggest of our CJA OET workforce development programs. The goal of this program is to prepare people for good paying, entry level clean energy jobs by providing clean jobs training, which will utilize a standard clean jobs curriculum framework. As I showed on the previous slide, this program will be delivered at 13 hub locations throughout the state, and there's $24 million per year of funding, plus $15 million for barrier reduction services, for wraparound services, and other student supports that will be provided through this program. That means roughly $1 to $2 million for program costs and another $500,000 to $1.2 million for barrier reduction services. It'll be delivered by community-based organizations and their partners. The cost per participant guidance is between $15,000 and $23,000, inclusive of barrier reduction funds. The key tasks of the Workforce Network hubs are to do outreach and recruit people from target populations. I'm sorry, to work with the navigators to do outreach and recruit people from target populations, enroll participants, eligible participants, deliver bridge training, and then follow that up with job-specific training, all the while providing barrier reduction supports where needed, followed by facilitating the transition to job placement, and finally tracking those participants and providing follow-up. So after being enrolled, participants may be led through pre-assessments to determine math and reading levels. Then they'll go through an essential employability skills training as well as a clean energy basics training. Participants will transition from that bridge program into job-specific training in one of the selected fields chosen by the Workforce Hub grantee. That training should include work-based learning experiences. Upon completion of this training, students will earn a certificate or be prepared to test for an industry certificate that'll help them get a clean energy career. Hub staff work to help the participant find a job, prep their resume, apply for the job, and then prep for the interview. Throughout this whole process, and even after the participant transitions to a career, case managers are working with the participant to provide them barrier reduction services to ensure their needs are being met and that they can actually afford their entry-level job. We anticipate that participants may need continued barrier reduction assistance for up to a year after transitioning to that job just to get on their feet. And so just to expand a little bit on the curriculum elements, the Bridge program has two basic components, right? The essential employability skills as well as the clean energy basics. When totaled, the Bridge program should be between about 120 and 200 hours. The essential employability skills training includes topics like goal setting, financial literacy, communication, and customer service. The Clean Energy Basics training provides participants with an intro to such topics as building science principles, safety, and electrical basics. And again, these are all covered in the Clean Jobs curriculum framework. And I'll be sure to link that to folks in follow-up after this session. So after completing the bridge, participants will transition into job-specific training to begin honing their skills in a specialized field, training toward a specific occupation or a set of occupations. Here you see a number of clean energy fields: solar PV, energy auditing, weatherization, HVAC, construction and building inspection, wind, and then other. Applicants are allowed to propose a training program in a field and for an occupation that's not listed here, but they should be prepared to really provide some research about the demand for that kind of training in their region. And so to do that, there are a number of things to look into, and really these are good resources for you to look at regardless of what kind of job-specific training you're proposing. So whether you're proposing a new one or you're proposing one that was on this slide already, even if you're choosing solar PV, it's a good idea to do some research on what the demand for those jobs looks like in your region. What are employers saying that they need? And some hard data that you could look at could come from the Illinois Clean Energy Jobs and Training Program inventory report that was a couple years old at this point. But I also provided a link here, and I'll include it in the follow-up email to the Illinois Clean Energy Jobs Regional Data Packet put out by our partner at the Clean Jobs Institute. So there's some ways to get some hard data, try to figure out what do the job openings look like? What's the future projected growth look like? But then there's also some work to be done here in just talking to employers. Um, what are they saying? What kinds of jobs are they hiring for? What are the skill sets that they're looking for? Um, and so, one thing that you can do in determining what programs to offer is examine the gaps. Where are there gaps in training availability or access? And that Clean Energy Jobs Training Program inventory report might be a good place to go for some of that information. So in addition to the bridge training and the job-specific training, grantees should ensure that at least 10% of their curriculum hours are devoted to work-based learning. And that's defined as sustained interactions with industry or community professionals in real workplace settings or simulated environments. These activities can include career awareness activities as well as workplace experiences. And you can see that career awareness activities include things like job shadowing, guest speakers, field trips, and workplace experiences include things like supervised work at job sites, supervised work at simulated job sites, and on-the-job training. All participants will receive a $13 per hour stipend for instructional hours. So they are paid $13 per hour for seat time, and that can include classroom instructional hours, and it also includes the work-based learning hands-on instruction. Students should not be receiving the stipend for completing intake. However, grantees can establish milestone incentive payments for things like passing an exam or completing the program. Important to note that stipends are not a wage and should not be represented as a wage. However, there may be implications on the participant's taxes as this is counted as income. Finally, when preparing budgets, important to note that stipends come out of program funds. So, then moving on to the barrier reduction funding. As I've mentioned a couple times, CEJA offers robust barrier reduction funding to help participants enroll in and eventually and stay in CEJA programs and eventually clean energy jobs. This is a very important element of our equity approach to provide participants the resources they need to be successful. And these aren't one-size-fits-all approaches. Grantees can provide participants with the services they need when they need them. Barrier reduction funds are included in the funding to the Clean Jobs Workforce Network program that we're discussing today, as well as the Climate Works pre-apprenticeship program. While navigators do not have barrier reduction funding, they are encouraged to coordinate referrals with the hubs and the Climate Works programs when appropriate as participants are in need. Barrier reduction funds, in contrast to the stipends, are a separate budget item from the program costs. Barrier reduction costs should be estimated separately from other program costs. And a little more detail about the barrier reduction fund support that can be offered. It provides many different kinds of support. It provides wraparound supports to reduce or eliminate all kinds of barriers like childcare, healthcare, housing instability, technology needs, and many others. And grantees will come up with their own policy for how much individuals can receive for what service and for how long, and if they have any sorts of caps on those funds. The barrier reduction funds also offer support for student learning, including tutoring, makeup classes, retesting, educational enrichment, mentoring, technology assistance for virtual learning, and expenses related to testing, applications, and certifications. And finally, it also offers transition support for students like mentoring, coaching, job search assistance, resume prep, and job application assistance. So who can participate in the workforce hubs? So one th one interesting element of this program is that people over the age of 18 with a barrier to employment are eligible for the program. Now, each workforce hub will dedicate program placements as follows, where the applicant pool allows. And so you see the pie chart here lays out the priority placement Okay. And what we mean by that is taking, understanding that everybody over the age of 18 with a barrier is eligible for the program. How do we prioritize enrollment to the program? And so what the legislation says is that one third of program applicants should be from both an EJ and an R3 community. So they're in a community that's both EJ and R3. One third of applicants should be from either an EJ or an R3 community. And then the other third of applicants are applicants that have barriers to employment. And within each of these thirds, we are prioritizing individuals with barriers to employment. So somebody who is from a community that is designated as both an EJ and an R3 community, they're in that first priority bucket. People from those communities with barriers to employment are the highest priority for serving. Okay. So, uh, when we talk about the bucket of applicants with barriers to employment, we're talking about things like prior involvement with the criminal legal system, current or former members of foster care, people with language barriers, people with low educational attainment. Those are all eligibility criteria, or I guess I should say prioritization criteria. So, um, don't get too lost in those weeds right now for application, right? That's something that we'll think through if you're able to win the award. But it is important to know that the populations you'll be serving are going to be people with barriers, and you're going to want to be prioritizing communities that are R3 and or EJ. All right, knowledge check-in. Somebody name a task of the workforce hubs. Feel free to come off mute. Anybody remember one? Or type it in the chat. Feel free to do that too. Oh, I see a couple chats here. Let's see. Training, yep, and recruitment, yep, you got them. Thanks for the assist, Christine. Um, yes, and so that was this slide here. So this one, recruiting participants with the help of the navigators, enrolling, delivering bridge program, delivering job-specific training, providing barrier reduction services, helping participants transition, and then tracking and follow-up. All right. Next one. What are some required components of the curriculum? So I talked a little bit about the Clean Jobs curriculum framework and what are those two major requirements? Job readiness. Yep, that's one of the topics that will be covered by the Essential Employability Skills Framework, which I would have also accepted. 120 to 200 hour training program. Yep, that's the hours for the bridge program. Good job. You got it. Cool. So we've got the bridge program and the job specific training program, and within the bridge program, we've got the two major elements of the essential employability skills as well as the clean energy basics, and then on the job specific training, we've got the training in each of the fields. Cool. Oh, I see another answer here too, and the job specific training. There you go. Yep, and we've got the credentials and training, transition support, wraparound services, $13 an hour stipend to support training. Cool. Very good. Very good. All right. The other program I want to touch on here, but we won't get into a ton of detail, but a little more detail than we will for the other CEJA programs. And I'm going to get into a little bit of detail on this because the Hub program will be working very closely with the Energy Transition Navigator grantee. And so the Energy Transition Navigator program, we have found grantees for almost all of our locations. We will have the NOFO opening up for Champaign and Kankakee in the spring. And the main goal of this program is to increase awareness of and participation in the CEJA programs. Navigators provide recruitment and enrollment and engagement throughout communities in Illinois to help support the CEJA workforce programs. Uh, this program is delivered throughout the state in the 13 hubs and surrounding areas, and will have $250 to $600,000 of funding per year per navigator, and will be delivered by community-based providers and any partners that they have. It's a good idea to touch base with the existing navigator in the region you're planning to apply for, um, to better understand how they operate, who their partners are, what services they're all prepared to provide. You'll be working very closely with this team if you get the award, so see if you can develop an outline of what that collaborative work will look like. In Peoria, Heavens View Community Development Corp is the navigator, and in Danville, it is Vermilion Advantage working with the TREP School. And again, the overall goal is to equitably grow the clean energy workforce to meet the demand for clean energy technologies and services. It's also to connect people to clean energy training programs that will prepare them for good paying jobs in the clean energy industry. Their focus is mostly going to be on the Workforce Hub program as well as the Climate Works pre-apprenticeship program. But navigators will also be building out the referral pipeline for other partners in the workforce ecosystem, right? Like WIOA, JTED, Illinois Works, and will also be keeping in close contact with the Clean Jobs Contractor Incubator Program as well. And then, of course, we also want them building relationships with potential employers at the end of the pipeline that we're building here, and so they're aware of the needs of employers as they're making referrals to the different workforce programs. Navigator teams will help participants through the application process. They'll help participants make an informed decision about what program to participate in. They'll assist them through the application process. I should have deleted intake from the top of this slide. I apologize. They will assist participants in completing the application process. The hub program will actually conduct intake, but the navigator teams will help applicants get through application. They'll also assist with the pre-screening to make sure they meet eligibility requirements. They'll help do some of the pre-assessments to determine the support services needed in their career interest. They'll refer people to other workforce and business development programs as needed, and they'll utilize provided materials and methods for the application process. And as I mentioned before, focusing primarily on these two workforce programs, the Climate Works Pre-Apprenticeship Program and the Clean Jobs Workforce Network Program. And so here, just in terms of the participant journey, put the dashed box here around the navigator role, right? So they're doing the outreach and the recruitment in conjunction with the hubs, and then they're going to help participants get through application. So halfway through the application and intake process, right? The navigator does outreach and recruitment, as I mentioned, primarily for the hubs and the Climate Works. They work with recruits to determine what programs they're eligible for and what programs best fit their needs, helping them determine barrier reduction needs, and then helping them with the application. And then the hub or the Climate Works program will pick up the participant at that point to make the application decision as to whether they will accept that participant into the program. They'll enroll them, provide barrier reduction services, case management, training, transitional services. It's important to understand, though, that navigators are not just interacting with potential participants. They are the connectors for the whole ecosystem. They should also be working to establish and maintain relationships to identify skill and hiring needs of local clean energy employers, inform recruitment and training decisions, facilitate job placement and work-based learning efforts. Essentially, navigators are working both ends of the pipe, ensuring participants are getting fed into the right program, and then ensuring they have somewhere good to land when they leave the training. Navigators will need to understand participant eligibility requirements for the different programs. And so that's something that I'm not going to spend too much time on because we talked about the pie here, but the Climate Works program does have a little bit stricter eligibility. Speaking of which, just want to mention the other workforce a couple of the other workforce programs that are part of our OET ecosystem here. Um, the Climate Works pre-apprenticeship program prepares people for apprenticeship programs in construction and the building trades. It utilizes a construction training curriculum with a clean energy focus and is delivered in 3 centers throughout the state. This program has $10 million of funding plus an extra $6 million for barrier reduction services. Grantees delivering this program are recruiting participants, providing construction training, providing wraparound supports, and doing apprenticeship placement and transition support. The Central Region Climate Works grantee is Hire 360, and they have training centers in Pekin, Peoria, Savoy, Decatur, Rockford, and DeKalb, with Bloomington Normal coming online in the next program year. And then finally, wanted to mention the Returning Resident Clean Jobs Training Program. The goal of this program is to prepare returning residents for good-paying, entry-level clean energy jobs. It provides training inside Illinois Department of Corrections facilities, utilizing the standard Clean Jobs curriculum that the workforce hubs will be using as well. The funding for this program is $6 million per year. The tasks are similar, once again, to recruit, similar to the Workforce Hub program. The tasks are to recruit participants to engage and to deliver the training program. The locations for this training are Kewanee, Mount Sterling, Decatur, and Vienna. All workforce hubs should be prepared to work with returning residents programs and participants in the Returning Residents Clean Jobs Training Program, but they should also be prepared to work with other returning residents who maybe are not participating in this program. This population has many complex barriers, and as they're being released from custody, we want to make sure their transition is as smooth as possible. Returning residents are automatically eligible for both the Hubs and the Climate Works program because their incarceration is a major barrier to employment called out by both programs. Work with the returning residents grantees across the state to develop a plan for how you will serve these customers. And so all of the programs I just mentioned, and really all the programs under CEJA, are equity focused. And so now that we've learned a bit about some of those programs, what are some of the ways we can think about equity as it relates to each component of the program? So when we're thinking about staffing, are we recruiting from the communities we're trying to serve? Are we reaching a diverse applicant pool? When we hire folks, are we providing them equity training to ensure all team members are on the same page? When we do outreach, are we creating outreach materials that show representation of the people we're trying to serve? Are we partnering with organizations who are trusted at the grassroots level who can lend credibility to our outreach efforts? In our training, are we using strategies to leverage the strengths of diverse participants? Are we offering different modes of learning to accommodate different learning styles and different learning schedules or different schedules? How are we meeting the diverse needs of folks as they transition to employment? Each person will have unique needs, and we should be prepared to meet each of those challenges. And really the same thing with wraparound services. Are we thinking about the needs of the populations we're trying to serve? Are we working with the right organizational partners who can help us address all those needs credibly and efficiently? All right, knowledge check. What programs will navigators primarily support? Mentioned a couple of workforce programs that the navigators will be primarily working with for their recruitment efforts. Anybody remember? Hubs and Climate Works. You got it, Bob. Thank you. Thank you. And what programs have access to barrier reduction funds? Workforce hubs and kind of a trick question. Same answer. Workforce hubs and Climate Works. You got it. Yep. All right, now let's talk a little bit about assembling your team. So when this NOFO finally comes out, who's your team that will apply for this grant? Well, there are a few different ways you can think about this. There's the single organization approach versus the team approach. DCO is strongly encouraging organizations to consider partnerships with other organizations. Um, um, but it's certainly possible that a single organization might be able to do all of the training components, as well as the wraparound services, as well as the data entry, as well as the transitional support. However, as I mentioned on many of the slides previously, we want to make sure that we're working with organizations that have credibility in the communities we're trying to serve. We want to make sure that we're creating a community of collaboration. So we want to make sure that we're getting input from all the stakeholders that know the most about the people that we're trying to serve, the needs of employers. And so definitely want to encourage partnerships. And so when you think about partnerships, we got the color coding over here on the top right. And really, we've got main grantee in blue, and then the partner shade of tan. That could be any number of partners. That could be three different partners providing different services along the way here, right? So you could have the navigators doing recruitment. You could have your hub team, the main grantee making application and enrollment decisions. And doing two of the training modules while one or more partners are helping with the wraparound support services and data entry, as well as picking up two of the training modules. So lots of different ways of thinking through this, but again, we want to encourage partnerships. So as you're thinking through the staffing of who is going to cover each staff role, we want to make sure your proposal covers all the staff roles that are going to be required by the NOFO. Don't leave anything blank. It's perfectly fine if you don't have all the roles filled at the time of application, but if you don't have the capacity on your staff, give us information about how you'll fill that role. What's the job description for the role? Attach that to your proposal if you have it. How will how will you recruit for this position? Will equity be a component of your recruitment search? How long do you think it'll take to fill that role? Or maybe it's being filled by a partner. Tell us about that relationship if it's being filled by a partner. And just show us in the application that you've thought through those elements. And it's not just oh, well, we haven't filled that yet, so we'll figure it out later. Tell us what that figuring out will look like. Or like I said, maybe you can fill that role with a partner. Great, but we need a little more detail about that still. Are we paying for that staff person's time with the CEJA grant? If so, we definitely want to make sure that they're included in your staffing plan too. All people being paid by the grant, whether part of your organization or a sub-grantee, should be included in the staffing plan. And that goes for the TBD positions too. So if you're planning to hire for a position, make sure to list that as a TBD position in your staffing plan as well. And so here are the staffing roles that will need to be covered. Some of these may overlap with existing staff that you have right now. You might have the same people doing application and intake that are doing data tracking. Like I said, it's important to address every required role. So even if you're repeating names, John is going to do application and intake, and John is going to do data tracking and outcome measurement. Help the merit review team understand how your program functions by describing each role in detail and how it relates to the overall project plan. What is each person doing, and how does that contribute to the overall project? What are the steps to getting somebody from application to training to transition, and how are these staff roles involved in that effort? And this is just an example, and I provide a blank version of this tool that you can uh, copy paste and swap out the words for. I provide that later, but this tool might help you figure out where the gaps are in your existing staff, and feel free to break this out into the required roles into specific tasks, even if that's helpful. So you can go through each role or even each set of tasks and figure out whether you have somebody on staff who can do that work, or whether you might need to seek partnership to cover that aspect or hire somebody. And if one of these rows is blank, that's something you need to figure out before applying. It might help you to start creating an org chart like the one shown here, or often organizations have a similar one but just oriented vertically. Merit reviewers are going to want to see evidence that your program has partnerships. Some of these partners are going to be sub-grantees who get grant money and a share of part of the scope of work. Other partners will be accepting referrals from your program for wraparound and/or student supports. Others may be employer partners interviewing or hiring your participants, or maybe offering classroom presentations or job site tours or other work-based learning opportunities. When assembling your application, ensure the following elements are in it. You're identifying partners that are going to be doing something with your team. You're identifying those things that they're going to be doing. And then they're going to want to make sure that there's an MOU spelling out what that commitment is, and then it's going to be signed by the entity you're working with. So identify the partner, explain their role, and then make sure that that's documented in an MOU that's signed by that partner. And then here are the major elements of a standard MOU. And at the bottom of this slide here, you see a link to an MOU template that you can use. And so an MOU is a mutual statement of commitment among two or more parties. And usually this document will spell out the project or program name, the purpose and background of the project, the scope of work and responsibilities under the MOU, the amount of funds requested for the recipient, the agreed upon mutual understandings, the reporting requirements, and then a signature and a date. All right, knowledge check-in. What are the important elements of detailing your partnership in your NOFO response? So that was when I was holding up my fingers. What were those? These knowledge checks give me a good opportunity to get a drink. Getting over a cold here. You got it, Elena. ID the partner, document their role, and show MOU. And yeah, Carrie, uh, demonstrate their commitment. Thank you, thank you. All right. So now that we've heard about the individual programs, how do they fit into the larger picture of what the state is trying to accomplish with CEJA? In OET, as I've mentioned, we refer to this as the CEJA workforce ecosystem. And what does that look like? So who's involved in the ecosystem? Um, Perhaps there are others not represented here, but this is a good start. Um, a big part of the ecosystem vision is that we're engaging in community planning, and part of that is ensuring that we've got all the partners, all the stakeholders at the table for this community planning effort. And, those important partners are community-based organizations, many of whom I think are here today, educational institutions, again represented here today, training providers, organized labor, employer partners, American job centers, local workforce boards, other workforce and economic development entities, and of course, local leaders at the city, county, and even state level. And notice that all the partners are providing input to the community planning, but all of these partners should also be talking to each other as well, building trust and building the relationship. The focus of this process shouldn't really be how do we get grant money, right? It should be how can our community benefit from the transition to a renewable energy future? What does our community need in order to realize those benefits? What are the opportunities for our community that we can take advantage of? What pitfalls can we prepare for along the way? Who has the capacity to accomplish the different aspects of the project? What gaps do we need to fill in order to realize success? And then once we've thought through these with our stakeholders, how can grant funding solve some of these issues and fill some of these gaps? And here's just another kind of high level way of looking at this community planning process, right? Is that within the community planning process, workforce training entities working with contractors or industry groups and working with economic development entities will come up with a shared plan or vision for applying for CEJA funding. And then that funding will train workers who will go to work for contractors, who will build out renewable systems funded by economic development grants. And that would be a successful ecosystem project. So let's talk about the actual grant application process. This graphic gives you an idea of what goes into the process of the grant application. It starts with you, the applicant, doing some homework for pre-qualification. Entities who do business with Illinois must meet certain legal requirements to be deemed qualified and in good standing in order to receive grants. So you'll need to register in GATA. You'll need to register with SAM and get a UEI. You'll need to obtain an FEIN. Non-governmental entities will need a certificate of good standing. Finally, you'll need to ensure you're not on the federal excluded parties, Illinois stop payment, or DHFS sanctions list. Then you're prepared to start the application. That brings us to the second box here. So you'll review the notice of funding opportunity and make note of all the required elements of the narrative. You'll also want to pay attention to all the required forms like the Uniform Grant Agreement, the Uniform Budget, and in some cases an application form. There might also be additional attachments like staffing plans, curriculum plans, work plans. You'll also need to disclose any conflicts of interest. You'll want to submit MOUs for all your formal partnerships. Then you apply. And at that point, the process shifts to DCEO. DCEO will select a committee to review applications. Then they'll meet as a group to get on the same page with regard to the scoring criteria and the things they should be looking for. An administrative review is conducted at the outset to screen out applications that were late or incomplete or duplicates, maybe for the wrong program, basically making sure they're passing on to merit review only the viable applications that can be scored. Then merit review takes place. This process alone can take several weeks. Upon completion of each reviewer's reviews, the review team meets to discuss their scores. Then they make recommendation to the director. Once the director approves recommended applications, notices to the finalists are made, and notices to those applicants who were rejected are also made. Applicants whose applications were rejected can then receive feedback from the merit review process so they can improve applications in the future. Finalists are moved into negotiation phase. Understanding that recommending an application for funding does not mean it's a perfect application. There are still elements that need to be clarified, refined, revised, cut, and that back and forth process can also take many weeks. The product of all this is a signed grant agreement and a work plan that DCEO approves and that the grantee can use to guide their work. So, what resources are there to guide you on your way? Um, So to the question of how do I find partners and employers? We have a partner sharing list, a contact list linked here, and it'll also be in the follow-up email that I send to you later. Um, and on that, you can identify the training providers. Well, I'm sorry. You can also look locally to identify training providers and community-based organizations in your area. Some things to think about are things like who offers construction training, who's doing clean energy training, who offers job readiness training. How about GED, adult education training? Um, who are the social service support agencies? And any of those people, any of those groups or organizations could be your partners on this application. And then I start identifying clean energy employers in your region who might help with work-based learning, who might be interested in hiring your participants. What skills are they looking for as they're hiring? Also want to look at your local workforce innovation areas, the job training and the JTED grant, the Illinois Works program, and other workforce development partners in your region. And then, of course, definitely want to work with other CEJA programs, especially the navigators. And here's that blank template I talked about earlier. So I'll send the slide deck out to you, and feel free to copy paste this into a Word document, and maybe copy paste it 5 or 10, 5 or 10 times if you've got a lot of tasks to cover. Um, this is the potential partner contact list, and it has organizations that are interested in partnering, clean energy employers, apprenticeship programs, NABCEP certified training providers, and the clean energy training programs from the inventory report. Some tips. When the NOFO comes out, we want to advise folks to pay special attention to program participant requirements, which are the participant eligibility criteria for the program design section, which lays out the minimum elements of a project funded under this grant, the eligibility, the funding information, which lays out the grant award amounts, the funding period, the budget components. The eligibility information will cover who can apply to administer the program. So basically your eligibility or not. And then the application and submission information contains all the required elements of the submission package, including how each section should be written. And it's a good idea to to literally put that section of the NOFO next to your application as you're writing it, so you can kind of cross-check it. Like, okay, here's what the NOFO said I had to cover in this section. Did I cover it in this section? And that section includes the required roles, and then the application review info is the scoring rubric. And Kyle, I will link the potential partners list in the follow-up email, and I think there's a slide here that has all the links on it as well. And then the other thing I'll quickly mention that. The other thing I'll do when I send that follow-up email is when you completed registration for this event, there was a question about whether you're willing to share your contact information with other folks who are willing to partner on this. And so anybody who checked yes on that box, I will have your email address in the publicly displayed to line, so you can respond to anybody who attended this call and wanted to share their information. So a couple different options there. Collectively, the applicant team should demonstrate an ability to serve all individuals, including diverse and equity-focused populations, demonstrate agreements with employers and others for work-based learning, job placement, on-the-job training, the ability to provide training using the Clean Jobs curriculum framework, uh, an ability to recruit, pre-screen, and provide training to prepare workers for employment, the capacity to provide supportive service, transition services, and the ability to provide training in locations that are accessible in the region. Some tips for preparing a strong proposal. Respond to the content of the proposal. You can even copy paste the section of the NOFO content and form of application submission into your proposal and just make sure your proposal contains all the elements in each section. Um, so what is the project doing? Don't expect merit reviewers to kind of cobble together the project plan from pieces you've scattered around the proposal. Like, don't expect, like, when you're describing your project plan, don't think that, oh, well, I mentioned that up in the executive summary. I'm not going to detail it in the project plan. Don't expect that the merit reviewers are going to know, oh, hey, I remember they mentioned something about that at the beginning of their application. They're going to be looking at your application next to the scoring criteria for each section, right? And so they're going to want to see in that section, are you talking about the thing that needs to be covered there? Um, uh, Tell your story. So tell us about your program. Um, Highlight the strengths of your team and make a case for your project and its potential impact. This should tell a story, right? Like we should be able to understand. Okay, we now know that this applicant is going to uh, uh, recruit participants from this area and in anticipation of these barrier reduction needs, and they're going to enroll them in this training program. Like, we should be able to see a beginning to end of each participant's journey through your program. And always think about staffing budget and partnerships. Are all the staff from the NOFO in the proposal? Yet another thing you can copy paste into your proposal to fill out the list of required roles. Who on your team is covering each role? When completing the work plan section of the proposal or the staffing plan, make sure all the staff that are in the budget are in the staffing plan, and include resumes for those staff. And then, as I mentioned, explain how you'll fill the staffing gaps. Make sure to detail the steps you'll take to turn a TBD into a filled position. Include job descriptions for all staff, and then detail the structure of the partnership. As I mentioned, identify the partner, explain their role, and then make sure that's detailed in a signed commitment in an MOU. And then ensure numbers are consistent and aligned. One of the things that we often see is that as we're working through our application, we're meeting with this partner, we're meeting with that partner, we're kind of refining the numbers. Oh, we think we're going to serve 50 people. Oh no, we're going to serve 100 people. And making sure that each of those little changes makes it across all of the additional attachments too. And so if in your narrative you make a change that says, oh, instead of $2.2 million, I'm going to ask for $2.4 million. If you say that in your narrative, make sure that your budget reflects $2.4 million too. One of the things that we see often that confuses merit reviewers is when one of those numbers changes, but the other doesn't. It makes it very difficult to understand, okay, what is the cost per participant on this grant if they're using two different budget numbers? What is the cost per participant on this grant if we're using two different enrollment numbers? So definitely try to keep track of those things. Oh, thanks, Devin. Perfect. And then finally, additional resources for grantees. Um, the DCEO hosts the site with a bunch of training videos, and you can see a partial list of those training topics here. So these are videos that are on the website permanently. You can go review those at any time. Videos that offer tips and info about pre-qualifications, budgets, preparing for DCEO grants, and many other topics. Peruse those when you get a chance. We also have a page on our website that has a schedule for regular webinars about grants. And every Tuesday, DCEO hosts virtual office hour Q&As. These will be somewhat generalized to like all DCO grants and will be conducted by people who are not CJA staff. So they can answer general questions you have about DCEO grant processes, but you'll probably want to save CJA specific questions for the CJA NOFO coach. And we'll talk about that in just a second too. DCO also hosts pre-qualification training on the first Wednesday of every month. Um, so these sessions will cover things like GATA, SAM, UEIs, FEINs, no payment lists, and the like. And then finally, DCEO hosts trainings on various participant-generated topics on the third Wednesday of the month. And you can see the next couple topics here. So next week, they'll be talking risk assessments. In April, they'll be talking about writing a grant application. And then there are many more topics to come, and all of these sessions are recorded, and the recordings of those sessions are made available on that same page. And then here's a bunch of other links. Links that cover budget and procurement guidance, including a DCEO document that pulls out many of the important 2 CFR 200 elements for you to review. We have DCEO guidance on administrative versus program costs. We have a link to the IDES labor market information, and we recommend you check out the Illinois Virtual Labor Market Information Tool. I've got a link here to the old NOFO. From the last round to get a rough idea of what to expect when we roll out the newest round. Please note that this is an old NOFO and should not be used to write an application for round 5. It will say on that NOFO is watermarked to say for reference only. We also have Illinois Clean Energy Jobs regional data packets from our friends at Clean Jobs Institute. Linda Larson helped put that together. Oops, sorry, helped put that together, and that's a very useful tool for kind of detailing the job demand in your specific region. So a lot of times we'll see state level data or even national data on, the upcoming demand for solar jobs or the upcoming demand for EV techs or things like that. But often difficult for merit review to understand how does that relate to your local region, right? And so this resource is great for that. I also mentioned like talking to employers and understanding their needs and the skills that they're looking for. So this can definitely complement that. The CJA mapping tool is a map of the CJA assets so you can understand what is happening in your region with CJA, what kind of projects are in the pipeline. An evaluation toolkit, and then finally a CJA FAQ for applicants. So if you've got lots of questions, other people have probably had some form of that question in the past too. So be sure to check that out. It is a very long document, but it is I think it's relatively searchable, and there are like hot links throughout. So if you see a subject, you can kind of click directly into it. Once the NOFO opens, you can also sign up for multiple sessions with a CJA NOFO coach. The CJA NOFO coach can assist you with CJA specific questions about your application. They can help you figure out if you're answering the NOFO prompts adequately, and provide feedback on that. They can't tell you what to write. They can't tell you one approach will give you more points than another, but they can advise whether you've adequately responded to what the NOFO is actually looking for. And as I mentioned, once the NOFO opens, you'll be able to sign up for those. And so this link will be in the follow-up email you receive as well. And then finally, I am looking to set up a couple of 2-day virtual grant writing workshops for early April, maybe early to mid-April. And we'll plan to cover topics like understanding the NOFO, connecting need statements to the project plan, creating a budget, and many more. I think the plan will be for those to be 2-hour events. And so, yeah, be on the lookout for those. I'll be sure to email that out to all the folks who attend this meeting, as well as the one for Champaign next week, as well as the Kankakee folks as well. And you should plan to send your program administrator and or grant writers that you are going to have working on the application. And with that, that is all I have, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments folks have. And you can feel free to type it in the chat or come off mute.
Thank you for this, Mr. Keener. One question. When you were talking about the wraparound services, and specifically one example was technology, can you give some examples of technology wraparound services that are acceptable?
I don't know if we have a list of acceptable services, but I think we're thinking there of technology that the student may need to use outside of classroom hours in order to complete coursework and or get in touch with the workforce program that they're working with. And but I think with like with all of our barrier reduction funds that can be paid for direct support. So maybe it's directly purchasing some technology, or it might be uh, paying for the services that a partner is providing as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mhm. When are the two NOFOs expected? I don't have an exact date on that. We are, I think, aiming for mid-spring. I think would be a good time frame. I don't have an exact date on that, but we'll make sure to email everybody who was on this call when that is posted. Will this webinar and slides be available after the meeting and emailed to participants? Yes, I will plan to email you the slide deck as well as a recording. And the recording might take a little while, so I think I've got the email drafted, and I probably am just waiting for the link, and I'll drop that in there. Can we use an app system for the returning residents program? Help me understand that one. Yeah, the prison program. Can we use an app system? What is? I need some help on that for clean energy. So are you asking about the application for the returning residents program? The returning residents program is not currently open. We have identified either grantees or finalists for all the locations for that program. Alana, I will add you or add that email.
Mr. Keener, I have a question about the stipends.
Yeah,
You had mentioned that they come from the program funds
yeah.
and that barrier reduction funds can be used for makeup sessions. So does that mean that, let's say our program is Monday through Thursday and they miss Monday because they're sick? So the regular hours then would be from the program fund, and then like, let's say they come in on Friday for a makeup session, would that be from the barrier reduction fund?
No, I'm sorry. That should be the stipend.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And I'll make sure that's clarified on the slide if that's confusing. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Some of these are relics of old presentations, and as things became clarified, I think I just might have missed that update. So apologies for that one. Anybody else?
Oh yeah, hey, one quick question.
Sure.
What determines the locations for the returning residents locations? Is it,
The returning residents program, so the legislation basically said that DOC, Department of Corrections, and DCEO, I think just said they would pick the locations, and I think can't remember all the criteria that went into it, but I think availability of existing services was one factor looking at that they were looking at. I think some of the um, security levels were one of the aspects that were looked at. Um, that's all I'm coming up with right now. Sorry, I wasn't as read in on that program for this session.
No worries. Just a quick, I mean, to your knowledge, those are not statutorily set, so we could lobby to get locations added. Is that possible, you think?
Um,
Locations are set by legislation.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Thank you.
and then I saw a hand raise. I don't know if it went down.
No, that's my hand.
Oh
My
yeah.
name, hi, my name is Latanya Rufus, and I am with Developing Our Youth. And this grant would allow us to expand our current programs that we have. And so we're really excited to see this because we already assist individuals in these particular communities. Um, Excuse me, will there be a time after this meeting that we may be able to meet with the program coordinator or talk to them prior to the NOFOs coming out, just to get a little more detail as to how to move forward prior to preparing our application for submission?
And so are you asking about the program coordinator at DCEO?
Or someone at DCO who is assisting during this process, just to ask questions to make sure. Because from what I heard on this webinar today, everything that you discussed is in line with some programs that we've already um, been performing and functions of our organization in the South Suburban region of Cook County and in some areas on the west side of Chicago and inner city Chicago. So was wondering if there was someone that we can probably ask more questions to at a later date prior to NOFOs coming out or during the next grant application process that's coming out, just so that we can make sure that we are moving in the right direction and applying for the grant to help us expand some of the services that we currently provide.
Yeah, so I'll tell you what. So one of the things we just have to be careful about is that. Um, so I would say you can email questions to me or to ceo.cja@illinois.gov, and I'll make sure that's in the follow-up email too. So
Oh,
you'll have my email and the ceo.cja email. One of the things
that
we
would be great. That would be
okay.
great. Because I do understand, and I didn't want to cut you off, but I wanted to say that we do understand that during grant processes, there's a line that
Yep.
you want to make sure that you're just asking questions that are more general than specific during this process, and that's kind of what I want to do, ask a little more specific questions because I know we don't have a whole lot of time today, but just to get more direction, just to make sure we are on the same path, and this would definitely be assistance to our organization during the expansion process.
You nailed it. Yep, that's it. And so yeah, so if you email me and or ceo.cja at illinois.gov, we can figure out if the only thing is if you're asking a question that I need to make sure that everybody knows the answer to, right? So we wouldn't want to give you an advantage. And so if it's something that everybody needs to know, then we'll make sure to add that to the FAQ. And if it's not, then yeah, we can answer that
Yeah,
for you.
and I don't think it
Yep.
would be a problem. Oh,
Yeah.
excuse me, with the questions that I'm going to ask, I would not have a problem if you shared my question with other individuals that are on the call. So I'm really open
Yeah.
to that as well. Just want to make sure that we are moving the right direction in our expansion projects. That's all.
Sure. Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I just want to reiterate too to everyone on the call that as you're thinking of your questions, please keep in mind that we cannot provide any advice on how to write your application. So if you email Nate or ceo.cja, just remember that we cannot provide any advice on how to write your application, what to write into your application, who to partner with, or any sort of that information that would be deemed providing a competitive advantage. We can speak to the elements of the NOFO requirements after it comes out. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. Anybody else have any questions?
One quick question,
Huh?
Nate. Uh, this is Kyle. And I was just asked, when the renegotiation of these come up, it is if there are parts and pieces, is that easy, what's the process for fixing say for missing a part of technology for barrier reduction services or something like that.
So, help me understand the question.
What is the process if like you're missing a piece of your after the first year, there's a piece that you've realized you're
I see.
missing, what's that renegotiation on an annual basis look like?
I see. I see. So once you've won the award,
Yes.
yeah, gotcha. Okay. So yeah, so actually we're kind of running into that period right now with our existing year one grants. And so around the spring of the following year, there'll be a period where we'll evaluate progress that you've made on the grant to date and kind of make note of you know, strengths and weaknesses and things that need to improve. And all of that will kind of be part of the effort of, okay, well, what does year two look like? And so the grantees will make budget requests at that time. And we haven't done it yet, right? But I think it's similar to the process for the first round of negotiation in that, especially if you know it going in, that will be definitely good rather than trying to pick that up as a budget mod somewhere in the middle. I don't know. I don't know like the specific steps involved in that, but I know that kind of the spring time is when all of that effort will kick off.
Okay. I was just, thank you.
And folks should feel free to keep asking questions. I had our partners over at CDAC help come up with some additional questions that we're interested in learning more from folks who have essentially folks who have applied in the past. But some of these are certainly relevant to new applicants too. That we just want to better understand how to improve the process for folks. So, so what support can DCEO offer to help your organization develop workable partnerships? Any thoughts on that, or what are challenges that you find in trying to find partners? Oh, I do see. Yes, we are coming back for another round in Danville. Um, uh, we have not been able to identify a qualified applicant that meets the minimum score thresholds in that region. Um, I do believe we have received application in the past. Um, Coming back out, the Vermilion Advantage grantee is understand when a partner should be a contractor or subrecipient. In some cases, they have limited roles. Ah, okay. Good note. And that's something that I can tell you that we have had some conversations about, and it's not exactly an easy thing to think through. So maybe better guidance on subrecipient versus uh or contractor versus subrecipient. Thank you. That's very helpful. I will say that our grant manual covers that if you're lucky enough to get to the stage of being awarded the grant, but we can provide that ahead of time as well. Are there things that you think your team, training, skill development that you think your team needs in order to be more successful in applying for CJA Workforce Hub or ET Navigator grants? Or are there specific areas of the grant process where you've gotten stuck before? And if so, are there things DCEO can do to support you in breaking through those barriers? And if you need some time to think about these, that's okay too. I'm going to email you out the slide deck, and if you think of something as you're reviewing it, feel free to shoot me an email. I had one more set of questions, but we're not a talkative bunch. That's okay. Here is my email in the middle, Nate Keener, CEDA Central Regional Administrator. And we also have the CEO.CJ at, oh, Latanya, go ahead. Did you raise your hand again, Latanya, or was it still raised? It was still raised. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so yeah, so then we've got the CEO.CJ at Illinois.gov, and oh, it went up again.
It was supposed to be raised. I was trying to
Okay.
unmute my phone. I do apologize for
Hey,
that.
no worries.
You had asked the question if there's anything that DCO or anyone could do to help us through this process.
Yeah.
With smaller organizations or organizations that are expanding, and I did hear the young lady earlier. I apologize, I didn't recall her name. I don't think because she had said that no, I don't think any one of us on the call is seeking assistance or needing someone to write the grant, application for us because we know our program and know, the individuals that we are definitely trying to reach and the individuals that this program is intended to reach. But I think that if there's sections of this grant application where someone may get stuck or um, walking through or thinking through a certain idea, is there possibilities for someone to ask questions, not to be provided or answered, but more or less to help ensure that, we're traveling down the same path when, you know, um, I guess iron out some of the kinks that may be in a program, so to speak. I don't know, um, what are or what programs or individuals that may on a call that may have been approved or may not have been approved in the past, but we want to be an organization that ensures that we are following the guidelines and meeting the program guidelines, but um when expanding projects and or programs, you want to make sure that you are definitely on the right track. Is that something that you provide, like, okay, yeah, this is in the ballpark of what we're doing, um but not saying yes, you need to add A, B, C, D. I don't think we're looking for that, but just to make sure we're going down the right path.
Yeah, I think so. And Devin, feel free
Eh,
to chime in
Yeah,
here.
yeah, I was just gonna say I'm happy to
Yeah.
answer that question as best I can. So thanks, Latanya, for asking that. Yeah, I think what Diana was trying to clarify is that when you seek assistance from a one-on-one technical assistance coach, um, it's kind of a fine balance of being able to help applicants better understand the notice of funding opportunity as it's written,
Yes.
and making sure that each applicant that seeks that assistance knows what in their proposal responds to or answers that sort of implicit question that section of the NOFO is asking. So all of those things we can do.
Okay.
The way that the guidance is provided is sort of like, does your proposal respond to that part of the NOFO or not? And so
Okay.
if it doesn't respond to the NOFO, or if it's like off topic, then the guidance I would say is that does not respond to the way the NOFO is written, something like that. And I
Understandable.
Yeah. So I think so I think you're right in seeking sort of clarification and better understanding the NOFO, and all of that stuff is stuff that we can cover in the one-on-one sessions.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. I really appreciate
Of
that.
course. Yeah, you're welcome.
Awesome. Well, feel free to raise your hand if you got anything else. Otherwise, I'm not seeing anything else in the chat. Um, And so I want to thank everybody for your time. I will get the email sent out to everybody who's on this call. And then I'll make sure, I'm guessing y'all are already on one of my email lists since you got the registration, but I'll make sure you're all on the master contact list that'll receive the announcement about the NOFO when it comes out, and we'll make sure to have a link for the NOFO technical coaches in that announcement as well. So you'll get all of the additional resources that were on this PowerPoint deck as well as the PowerPoint deck itself. So um, again, thank you all for joining. I wish everybody good luck for when the NOFO comes out, and hope to be working with some of you here pretty soon.